So about 1 month shy of the year on the road with the Yoeleo R11. This is going to be kind of a breakdown of where things are at this point, what I've changed, how the bike is handling, what I like, what I don't like. Well, let's start here. First of all, when I built this bike, I put a 50-34, same deal, rotor, direct mount, I'll do crankset. And I was just kind of guessing at that point. I really liked this rotor cassette. It's an 1128, beautiful piece, lightweight, really nice. But as it turns out, I didn't love the gearing that I had with 50-34 and that 1128. So I did a whole lot of thinking about that, and I plotted the gears in a spreadsheet chart I set up so I can input any cassette from any manufacturer and the number of teeth on each cog of those cassettes and any chainring combination. And I can see what the gear ratios, the gear inches are for each step. And I know from experience what gear inch range works really well for me. And that 50-34 and 11-28 just didn't do it. It was okay, but I don't really need an 11-tooth cog. I don't really need a 12-tooth cog. The bike I had before this had a Campy 1326 on it, and I rode it at altitude up in the Rocky Mountains for 10 years. And so I knew what gears worked. Now I'm 20 years older, but I think I'm in better shape all in all. Anyway, I bought that 4630 for this bike as a build-in process. And that's the 50-34. I just put it on this one because the cassette I have going on there, when I match that with the cassette steps, it's really good. It's actually, I'd say it's about 90% of what I'd like. So that's going to work out well for that. And I bought the 4630 for this bike, but I wanted to fix the gearing on the Yoeleo because I wasn't in love with it. Now this has pretty much solved the problem. I can ride on that 46 with just about any of those gears all day long. I'm never on that small chainring unless it's an accident. Now I've got this is a DI2 setup, so I've got it synchronized, so at a certain point, if I'm shifting down to find a lower gear, it'll automatically shift to the small ring there and couple it to a shift back here. And that happens occasionally, but I want to get out of that. I don't need anything but the 46 on there, and that 1128 now works fine. I'd contemplated about putting a 1428 Ultegra on here, but then I'd have to change this because this won't work with a 14 tooth, different size cage. We're talking about $300 for that thing. It's crazy. But when I bought this 4630 and I plugged it into my gear chart tables, I could right away see there's about 4 or 5 gears right in the middle of that cluster that work really good. And I'm in all of those gears during the course of a ride, except for that one, and hardly ever this number 2 cog. But the rest of those, I'm using it all the time. It works well. So that's been kind of the major change in the drivetrain. The other major change took place pretty early on after I built the bike. I used the handlebars that come with the frame from Yoeleo. They call them H9. It's an integrated bar stem. Now, I deliberately ordered a shorter stem and a narrower bar just to give it a whirl and see if that worked for me, and it didn't work at all. In fact, it was horrible and changed the handling of this bike. It was dangerous. I got crazy speed wobble, even going uphill, standing up on the pedals out of the saddle, going uphill. I could get speed wobble on this. It was nuts. There was nothing wrong with how I had set it up. I went ahead and I bought this 3T and a Shimano Pro Live bar. Now that's a 42 and this is a 110. And what was on here when I specified it with Yoeleo was a 90 and 40. It was a 90, or was it 100? I think it was a 90 and a 40. Anyway, that was stupid, but it was an experiment and I found out that doesn't work. 42 is right for me. So that's the other major change here. The rest of the gear that I bought when I put this bike plan together is still on the bike. Shimano Ultegra Di2, speed play pedals, wonderful pedals. I love the fact I don't have to look down to clip into my pedals. You can clip in either side, you just get on it and go. Now I bought these things. These are a cheap carbon cage from AliExpress. And they work just fine. They're not expensive. They look good. They're lightweight. Anyway, when I originally posted a video on my YouTube channel about building this bike, one of the viewers wrote me back and said, those cages are not dependable. I guess he had them and he said it broke rather quickly. Now I've had these cages on a different bike and never a problem, and no problem on this. I don't see what the problem is, but this is a new pump. The lighting, Garmin Varia, all of that. That's a moon tail light. I like that kind of strobe flash on the front and the rear during the day, and that's what it's designed for. But as soon as it gets dark, I'm going to switch to one of these. And I'm always on in the front because Thai roads are kind of crazy and there's construction going on over here. You never know on a road under construction in Thailand if all of a sudden you're going to run into a hole, an unmarked hole. That's happened. I've seen stories of people killed doing that. Now, I have done a few changes, like the Handbini bottom bracket. That's just fine. And I had a problem installing it at the beginning. There's video posts to that effect. But what I did is, as a dealer in Bangkok, the bike shop I like and the mechanics great, and they sell enduro ceramic bearings, and I put angular contact, 15-degree angular contact bearings in there. And they're wonderful. So that's been a change. The bearings that were in the Handbini bottom bracket were NTNs. That's what you get when you order it from him, unless he's changed. But I screwed up the bearings when I buggered up the initial install of the bottom bracket. So I popped those out and I put some SEMA ceramic bearings in there because that's what my local shop had. And I just needed to get the bike on the road. But I didn't ride on those for very long until I bought these angular contact bearings, and they're just fine. What other problems have I had with this bike? Well, other than the speed wobble, which was due to the cockpit configuration I chose, that got fixed. I ran into a slot in a concrete culvert one night and came to an immediate stop, and it broke the rim. So I replaced the rim and rebuilt the wheel using the existing spokes and hub. I put a video post on my channel about that. I had a problem with DI2 just stopped working, and I looked at everything. Usually it's a matter of one of these cables coming loose, and that wasn't the case. So the next thing I want to do is check the battery. So I pulled the seat post out and fished the battery out of the seat post, and it was moist. So water had gotten down in here, and I don't know if it was around here it entered or through this point here, because this is right close to that. And water could have gotten in here when I was washing the bike, because these grommets, they don't fit tightly in the frames. The front end of that thing tends to want to go like this. So I don't know if any of y'all use this stuff. This is self-fusing silicone tape. It's marvelous stuff. This is it. Now there's no glue on the bottom of the tape. What happens is, and that's one thing I like, there's no gummy residue. They have the tape protected with this plastic shield so the layers won't stick, because as soon as a piece of this silicone tape touches another bare piece of the tape, it fuses together, and it's really hard to get it apart. If you do it and mess up putting it together, you're going to have to take it off and put in a new piece, because you can't get it off without ruining it. So I just cut a little piece, wrapped it around. Now this stuff also, now you can repair a burst water pipe with this stuff. It's amazing. You can stretch it an awful lot. It doesn't tear. So the more you stretch it, the more pressure it puts on the seal. So I stretched this a little bit, not too terribly much, and then I overlapped it about 3/4 of a turn, so it's not going to come off. No water's going to get in there. And I did the same thing with this. I think water can get down in there even though there's this rubber boot on it. So I took this stuff, a whole width piece of it, and I wrapped it around this stem so that it goes down to the top of the frame, and this boot slides over it. And then when I was looking at the bike in Bangkok at the shop I mentioned I like, that guy thinks I have a crack in my seat post. So I went ahead and ordered a new seat post, because this is a proprietary piece. You can't find this on the open market. You have to get it. That's one thing about this design. It's similar to the Giant design, but it's not the same size. So you got to get it. So I just went ahead and ordered an extra one, have it on hand. But I thought, I'm not sure that that's a crack. It could be just a surface mark on there. I don't know. So I took that self-fusing tape and I wrapped it around up about 3 inches from here and covered that mark completely. Now that's not a real safe repair if in fact it's a crack, but since I've done that, I've ridden this bike about 500K. I don't feel any give in that, and if it does crack, that stuff is going to keep the thing kind of together, so I don't think it's going to be dangerous. I put a different bag on here from the one I initially spec'd, which I like, and I'm using it on another bike. But that shop in Bangkok, they sell Castelli and Ritchie and high-end stuff, a bunch of different really crazy expensive frames. And they had this Silka bag, so I went ahead and bought it. It's got a BOA release, BOA or whatever you call it. It's a nice bag, it's waterproof, but you kind of have to fiddle around with this to get it on and off. And it's just more complicated dicking around with that than just a simple cheap bag where it has a Velcro strap that runs through the rails of the seat. But I almost never have a reason to go in that bag. I've never had really a problem where I needed to do any repair while I was out riding. So that feature doesn't really bother me too much. Garmin Vary, I did a post on that because this damn little button here to weather protect seal, that thing wears out and it breaks exactly on the outline of that little oval bump. It breaks and that comes out. It still works. Now Garmin's replaced this thing twice at no charge because of that, because it happened twice in the first year under warranty. Now it's not in warranty. I know how to fix it myself if it does it again, because that silicone tape, I'll just wrap a piece around there and put one of these things in the opening. It fits in there perfectly, that little rubber plug, and then just put a piece of silicone fusing tape all the way around. It works just fine. But that's not a Garmin only issue. That's the same thing with this Wahoo. The on-off plug here, that thing came out. It's not broken off, but it's not in there correctly. The front edge is broken. So what did I do? Well, in this case, I just took a piece of electrician's tape and covered it, and that's no big deal. But that's the problem with those weather protect seals. Now these for some reason don't seem to have any problem, but you're not using these as much as you use that one, so that might be why. Same thing with the Wahoo on the back. There's another little rubber weather protect seal you have to undo to plug in the USB to recharge it, and that doesn't actually seal up properly. So once again, I put a little tab of electrical tape on there, and when I need to charge it, I just peel it back and it will stick and come down and stick again, no problem. This is the next project. Look at that. That's pathetic. Now this is the bar tape. This is Supercaz. This stuff is not cheap. But look at that. Now that's less than a year. I'm going to peel it off. I bought some new tape. But what did I do? I went on the local version of AliExpress called Lazada. And they have, for all the world, it looks exactly like Ritchie brand faux leather tape. And it's kind of the same color brown. Now this has gotten darker than it was. It was more coffee colored. But it looks for all the world like the Ritchie faux leather tape that they sell. Only it was like 150 baht. That's $5. So I'll tell you what, this cost me about 60 bucks to get it from Supercaz in Taiwan and have it shipped to Thailand. Crazy. But I was building the bike and that's what I wanted, so I just did it. And beautiful looking tape when you get it on there, but look at it. Okay, so you might argue, well, tape's not going to last forever, but yeah, okay. that's one of its virtues, is it's really grippy, and even when it's soaking wet or you got sweat on there, you've got a good grip on the bar, you won't slip. But that's that grippiness coming off for you, so it's not so grippy now. Anyway, what's my impression of Yoeleo? Well, I'll tell you what, their customer service is grade A. There's a lady named Jasmine. If you have to deal with Yoeleo, ordering or getting a repair or whatever, you're going to be talking to Jasmine, and Jasmine's right on top of stuff. Now, she must be busier than a one-armed paper hanger, as they used to say, because it's just her. There's a lot of people calling Yoeleo. This is a fine frame. Now, there's a guy that wrote a snide comment. I took it as kind of snide when I posted a build video of this, and he just asked, why'd you buy a cheap carbon frame? I'm going, well, there's levels of cheap, and this is inexpensive. Why would anybody spend $12,000 buying a crazy expensive Pinarello or Colnago or whatever? Why? That frame has been fine. Nothing wrong with it. It's a super light frame, so you gotta expect that there's gonna be different handling characteristics when you're on it. And boy, you can feel it. I mean, when I stand up and pedal hard on it, it sometimes feels like the bike is coming off the ground like a thoroughbred racehorse. All four of its hooves are off the ground at some point. It's lightweight, and it feels like it. I mean, there's a little bit of jitteriness if you're going fast downhill, but it's not out of control stuff. It's just kind of characteristic of the frame. But look at that. That's a big, fat head tube and a big, fat down tube. It looks good. The design is simple, but it looks good. They're not trying to over-design this for some crazy artistic reason or marketing thing. It's just a good design, and they've sold a ton of them, and it gets good reviews from riders. Now, I paid them it took $100 extra, and they will custom paint it whatever paint you select. Well, this is what I selected, and they did it, and it's fine. There are a couple things about the Yoeleo paint job, though, that I think could be better. Now, that's just a wear mark where something was rubbing up against that and wore the paint off. But how could that happen? Well, I'll tell you what I think. I have a little small car. When I go to Bangkok, I'll take the front wheel off this and put this in the back of the car with the rear seat folded down. But it's a tight fit. Gets in there, it's okay. I think at some point I must have had something like a water bottle or something, and this thing was just rubbing on it. But that shouldn't happen. I think that needs a little bit extra paint there, Yoeleo. You could do it. The other thing is, you might be able to see that it's kind of irregular around that edge of the fork. Now, I'd say if there's any part of the frame that's hard to get the paint right, it's frame openings here. There's another little irregularity right there. You can see it. Where is it? Right there. And it just kind of flaked off a little bit. That's the opening there. Now, anybody that's watched my videos of this build, especially the Handbini install, will remember me. I kind of rucked up the paint around the frame opening for this bottom bracket. And rather than taking it to the shop, I could have just taken it to the shop and had them repaint this because I have the paint code. I put some of that frame protective sticker. I painstakingly cut it precisely around that opening, cleaned it up good and stuck it. Now this stuff has been on there for a year. It's not coming off. So I don't think I'm going to worry about getting paint touched up. It's no big deal to me. Shit happens. If you're riding a bike, more than that'll happen. Now there's the other little blemish, paint. How did that happen? Damn, I don't know, but it happened before I even got it out on the road. I was putting this together and came down here and looked. I said, what the hell, how'd that happen? I don't know. So if there's anything I think Yoeleo could do better, it would be better paint job. But honestly, when you're talking about frame painting, if you took it to a custom painter, he's going to tell you the paint jobs that manufacturers do on their frames are kind of crap. And part of the reason is, well, this is a super light frame. Look at the thin seat stays, super light frame. Down here on the bottom bracket, there's about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 3 millimeters of frame material below the bore opening in the frame for the bottom bracket. Now, why couldn't they have made that a little bit more and added another 10 grams, 20 grams? I don't know. They should have, in my estimation. That's cutting it close. But on the other hand, they got this big old fat down tube and big head tube. That's not a small top tube. Why? Shaving minuscule amounts of weight with that design. It hadn't affected the performance. I'm just curious about that. Maybe somebody that knows better can tell me. Now, I don't ride this bike every day. I built 2 more bikes since this, and then that's going to be the 3rd bike. That's a cyclocross frame. It's a beautiful frame. It's an old design that Tom Ritchie came up in 1986. Cantilever brakes, and my other bike that I built right after this is a Ritchie road bike. It's called a Logic, Ritchie Logic road bike frame. It's rim brakes. I like rim brakes. The reason I bought that cyclocross is because I wanted to get an off-road bike, a gravel bike or something, just try it out, but can't get it without disc brakes. So I saw this one, I said, well, there you go. Let's give it a try. Never done anything with canny brakes, so now I'm learning about that. Now, I think that they've discontinued the rim brake model on the R11. You can only get it with disc brakes. I'm not sure that that's 100% correct, but I think it is, because I looked on the website and I didn't see the R11 rim brake anymore. That's a shame, but that's just the way things go. Now, somebody wrote about these rubber bands that hold this accessory equipment on and how they do wear out, and if this one wears out and breaks, then your expensive Garmin Varia falls onto the road. You'll never know until you get home. But yeah, they do wear out and they break, but there's a little opening here, and it's big enough to put a thin zip tie through it. See, I could get rid of that rubber band. That zip tie is holding it on. I could put another one down here if I wanted to, but just so when you take this off, the whole thing doesn't twist too much. As it is anyway, you have to use one hand to stabilize that and the other hand to turn that. That's not coming off, so there you go. You do not need to buy the expensive accessory Garmin makes, only for round seat posts, by the way. About, what, $25 just to get something that's not going to do that. But that's the other way to fix it. Just use a zip tie. It'll work. Go right through there. Anyway, the R11 is a fine bike. I've enjoyed riding it an awful lot. And I'm delighted every time I'm on it because I did it myself. But I gotta fix that. That'll be my next thing. The reason there's no chain on there is it's hanging up there. It's been waxed today. Chain waxing day. Yeah. I'll put that back on there. I go about 300K and then I re-wax it. Now, the smart thing to do if you're waxing chains instead of lubing them is get 2 chains, get them both waxed and keep one on reserve like I do with that. So when you need to clean and re-wax your chain, you don't have to misride, and you can just put the spare chain on and keep going. But I've kind of trumped that methodology entirely by just getting 2 bikes. You need to wax the chain, ride the other bike. Anyway, carbon tie hubs, super lightweight, really strong, simple design. I got a new set of wheels to build for that Ritchie bike there. The wheels are in this box. Now these are from Far Sports and they're fine. These are from Light Bicycle. It's basically the same thing except I bought a narrower profile. I think it's 25. This is a 30. Otherwise, it's the exact same thing. It's a tubular rim designed for rim brakes. And I'm going to build them up, SAP-MC X-ray, and the same hubs, because why not? They work fine. That's my next big project to finish that build. I need to build the wheels so I can get the wheels in there and make all the final adjustments. Anyway, Yoeleo R11 1-year review. I wouldn't hesitate getting the Yoeleo. You can forget what that man chided me for. Why did I buy a cheap China frame? Well, there's the different levels of cheap. This is inexpensive but well made, and it's got a good warranty and a good track record. And you can see other people like Steven at Oz Cycling just did a review on the new R11 with disc brake frame. That's my input. Hope you enjoyed it. Yoeleo R11. Yoeleo.